With the launch of Marathon 2026, we as the runner shells have finally made it onto the surface of the legendary planet of Tau Ceti 4 to witness the colony that was meant to be set up there before the 4 came along and blew it all up, as well as after. With it, we have discovered that this planet is not what it seems. Whilst it might look beautiful on the surface, there are some terrifying dark forces at work underneath that have kept humanity at bay and stopped them from ever being able to expand. We have also been able to explore the Marathon itself and learn that it was never just the UESC who wanted to venture out to this new system and start a colony, but it was also a variety of other corporations and factions who wanted to bring their own unique thing to humanity in this new era. One of these corporations that invested in the Marathon expedition was NuCaloric, who wanted to provide health resources, food and drink to the new colonists in the hope that humanity could thrive going forward with new farms, new scientific creations and new ways of producing medicine, as well as many other products. However, after the destruction caused by the 4, humanity did try and continue to live on and set up their new Cascadia colony, but new forces got in their way, and for the corporation of NuCaloric, they would eventually go on to discover something horrific, something lurking underneath within the planet that was causing all of them to perish in horrific ways, making Tau Ceti 4 completely unlivable. So in today's episode, we will be exploring our first faction of Marathon, as well as what happened to them during the colony era and what has been discovered in this current era. This is the corporation of NuCaloric and their discovery of the Tau Ceti Contagion. We start the story of NuCal back on Earth in the 24th century. During this time, humanity was suffering pretty badly. According to the book History for Young Readers provided to the colonists of the Marathon a good few centuries later, the mid-2360s saw a massive famine for the people of both Earth and on Mars. This famine resulted in a huge fungus attack that targeted wheat, rice, and other basic forms of grain worldwide. Everyone, rich or poor, went hungry because of it. Because of that, massive food riots took place, riots that eventually turned extremely violent and led to new factions forming that were heavily against their leaders, factions such as Mida. The next problem came, like most problems in this world, thanks to the governments of certain countries. The wealthier nations went on to hoard all of their food resources, and private militias seized control of other governments that collapsed. This is where NuCaloric came in, as they, as well as the faction of Traxxas, could not face sitting back and watching the worlds of both Earth and Mars collapse, and decided it was their time to get involved and make a statement. Founded by Gus Moraine, this man was a philanthropist and made the whole corporation do good in the world, creating basic consumer goods within the Sol system to help those less fortunate out, and eventually completely revolutionizing the agricultural landscape, diversifying it based on its new surroundings. Thanks to their new creations, NuCal were able to distribute these new food types and change the way that food was made. Yes, it was completely artificial and didn't have any natural products in it, but it helped everyone out on Earth and Mars, allowing them to eat again, even if the food was extremely different to what they had had before. This whole event completely changed how humanity looked at food, especially how much they wasted, and to this very day, that is something that is fundamental for survival, making sure you have the right thing to eat and the right amounts that it will not be wasted. With NuCal being heralded for their selfless actions during the watershed famine, when the Marathon expedition was first set up in the 25th century, the UESC and NuCal came to an agreement, signing a contract with them to supply the civilians with all of their goods in return for a legal stakeholder in the colony's venture. The contract enlisted 366 NuCal corporate entities and had made multiple parts to it. Some of those important ones of note were the work by contractor point, that stated if NuCal were to work outside the attached specifications, all that property will become the intellectual property of the UESC. It would also go on to state that the UESC retains sole authority to suppress rebellions, sovereignty movements, or armed resistance that may emerge among colonists, and would allow all NuCal products to remain their property. A lease that would have a duration of no less than 600 years, fully renewable when needed, and can be cancelled only by specific people in the NuCal entity. As the Marathon project was going ahead, it was down to the corporations to find the perfect location for this colony to set off for, with NuCal looking at the local fauna, weather and terrain to make sure that their agriculture and farming would be suitable and food production could start almost immediately when setting up there. Survey drones would be sent out to multiple planets in the attempt to find the perfect one. Enceladus, the sixth largest moon of Saturn within the Sol system, was one they first looked at, but was quickly declined, with NuCaloric agricultural panels stating it wasn't practical at all. And Proxima Centauri b was also declined, with NuCal determining that agriculture in a red dwarf star system would come with so many uncertainties, and with that had no confidence in this specific planet. Eventually, Tau Ceti 4 was found, with the corporations finding that it had an abundant carbon-based plant life capable of sustaining fauna and was in no need of long-term terraforming for it to be self-sustaining. The panel, which included NuCal agronomists, strongly agreed that this was the perfect planet for them, and it seemed there was no other candidates that even came close. That said, an additional note on the survey drone cartridge went on to claim that there were details about the likely presence of redacted in the Tau Ceti system. All further discussion of redacted must be formally submitted to the Mission Special Projects Committee. What this note was about is unknown, and when it was added is also unknown, but could explain some of the trouble the colonists experienced later in their travels. With Tau Ceti 4 picked out, another ecological survey was conducted isolating specific areas for where things could take place, stating that both the areas that they would name Perimeter and Diamarsh were regions with rich fauna, but specifically focused on the local populace of anthropods that they would name as ticks. Upon researching them, the ticks were said to be non-hostile towards any drones sent, but they do seem to swarm in large numbers, so this was to be something to watch going forward. Eventually in 2472, the Marathon expedition would finally launch after being fully assembled utilizing the moon of Deimos, a project that took 69 years. Nice. Being placed into cryo, the colonists would venture out into their new home, a home they would reach 300 years later in 2773, and once arriving, the defrosting process would begin, and some, not all of the colonists, would begin setting up their new world. For NuCal, they would give out a nice little present for everyone venturing out there. This product would be named the Drinkable Cheeseburger, a product that could be enjoyed alone or shared with another individual if you wanted, and was advertised with the phrase, "tastes like meat, isn't," after a long debate about how you advertise a product with no natural ingredients. This product was handed out to colonists as part of a welcome package endorsed by founder of NuCal himself, Gus Moraine, who congratulated them for their sacrifice, stating they were leaving everything behind to further humanity and its goals, and for that, they needed to be rewarded, giving them this lovely product, the Drinkable Cheeseburger.
We've sent a favorite from home with you. NuCaloric 187, the Drinkable Cheeseburger. You'll find individual and shareable sizes in your colonist welcome package. Please, consider it a small gift from me to you. One that doesn't come close to expressing all our hopes for your mission. Indulge responsibly. Good luck.
Tau Ceti 4 was here. It was right in front of the colonists, and for NuCal it was an opportunity to start exploring how they were going to start farming here and producing new food. The Marathon had been fully loaded with tons of seeds from back on Earth, ready for the new way of farming, and would be stored within Diamarsh eventually, in the vault simply named the Seed Vault, that would be overlooked by the colony's agricultural support AI named Darius, who would only give permission to those at NuCal with that specific clearance. Specific recipes would be brought with them as well for things like the Drinkable Cheeseburger, which would continue to be made within the labs going into the next few years. Everything looked perfect, but going into the next century, NuCal and the colonists would start to have major problems that seemed to be triggered out of nowhere. Whilst we know that 20 years later the Four would go on to attack not only the Marathon ship, but also the colony down below, somehow the colonists would go on to survive, and with the Four now gone, would try and set up their new world of New Cascadia once again. Diamarsh would officially be established by both UESC and NuCal with the help of one individual named Dr. Carissa Song, who was at the front of this whole operation. With labs all set up, research and production started to take place, and one of the big operations taken on by the scientists was to help explore explore the tick populace a bit more, to see how they function and what benefit they could give to humanity. For many, the ticks were completely harmless. They just went around doing their business like really big bugs and didn't bother the humans too much. Some, however, were freaked out, stating bugs shouldn't be the size of dogs, and that freaked them out completely. During their observations, some characteristics were defined for these new species. Ticks would raise an alarm, a high-pitched sound to deter anything they see as threatening. They would then run at the target in a straight line over the shortest distance possible, and then chase the target for at least 10 meters with no regard for its own survival. No retreat was witnessed during their time, and actually Dr. Tobias Lutero, the scientist behind their observation, was the one who had to retreat himself from their aggression, but liked to assume that they were capable of retreating themselves. They were also said to sing as well. Although it was not audible for humans, all scanners could pick it up. Why they sang, however, was not determined. During this research, however, despite a few aggressive acts by the ticks, Dr. Tobias was able to find something. And that was the ticks had high protein content in their waste secretions. Getting the ticks to dispose their waste in collection pods thanks to artificial pheromones, it would be digested with genetically modified bacteria, and the final result would be a liquid filled with protein that would be suitable for human consumption. This would create a brand new NuCal product that they would name as premium tick milk, although it wasn't actually milk at all. Whilst the process was easy for the ticks, collecting it from them was seen as extremely dangerous, as the pheromones caused the ticks to become far more aggressive and territorial. But this product was seen as extremely sustainable and healthy for families, especially those with kids. However, despite finding this product, Dr. Tobias also witnessed a horrible evolution of the ticks as they became increasingly hostile and aggressive in just a matter of a few weeks. This would eventually lead them to attacking him and leaving him with multiple lacerations from their mandibles, with Tobias on the receiving end of new blisters, ones that were far more stringy than usual, forcing the medical AI of Gabriel to step in immediately. Just by their intervention, this one harmless albeit territorial creature had now become incredibly aggressive to all humans, and as a result, it being caged up only made it worse, with Dr. Tobias coming up with the conclusion that their toxins had evolved incredibly quickly, and it was a direct response to their continued ecological presence.
I expected some level of adaptation from the local fauna, especially after we started studying them in detail. But evolving toxins so quickly, I think it's a direct response to our continued ecological presence. Honestly, impressive. Don't think blisters are supposed to look so stringy.
Warning, flesh necrosis detected and spreading. My apologies, Dr. Lutero. Please remain stationary for auto-scalpel deployment.
Oh, wait!
Whilst Tobias was exploring the local fauna and witnessing its rapid hostility, another major incident was happening in small pockets of the colony. After eating the newly produced food and also the food brought with them, some members of society were falling extremely sick, which included members of NuCal themselves, vomiting and collapsing being a common early symptom shown in some areas of Diamarsh. To look into this, Dr. Carissa Song would go out on a mission to look into what could possibly be causing it and any other factors that could be a part of it. Here she would record a log as she went onto an emergency inspection of the water filters located within the algae ponds in Diamarsh, only to find that it had been infested with filament worms that seem to be multiplying at rapid rates, because even though the Bobs, the born on board workers, were scraping them off every time, they'd come back in even bigger numbers. The problem with this was every filter had to be shut down to be cleaned, and because of it, their food quota for the month was down by 30%. That said, Dr. Song did note that the contagion was caused by the appearance of fungal growths, and luckily for them, this spot was free from them. Only the worms existed here. However, Song did notice their nests smelt a lot like tamarind, and that it could be edible. It just needed to undergo tests by Darius, so maybe another source of food for the colony, if deemed safe. Despite that problem, it wasn't the end of the world yet, but it was a major setback. Alongside this, over in the NuCal labs for food production, it would appear that things weren't going the way many would like, but that was down to workers not actually going by the full rules set by NuCal. In the drinkable cheeseburger labs, for example, one recording shows that workers were finding new ways of making the burger to help make their lives easier and weren't following the training techniques, claiming it was because they weren't in the perfect conditions. In the words of the worker within this lab,
"The issue is your mixture's too rich. You essentially pushed a batch of DCBs at premium."
I followed the training prompts.
Yeah, it's just that the training was done for ideal conditions, and this is not that. Can't mod the product outside of NuCal standards, but you can mod the interface. We put in presets all along the side here.
Oh, nice. Premium, select, standard, survival. What's silver?
Lifts restrictions, but strips the NuCal branding from the package. Watch this. If you ever need to, you can shunt silver back into an organics tank, start a new session, and then make branded product using it as an ingredient.
That's... Wow. That's in case of emergency?
That's in case of an I can't stare at the screen anymore emergency, yeah.
Whilst it's not confirmed, it clearly shows that the food going out into the colony of Tau Ceti wasn't at the highest standard, and these skipped measures by the people at the Drinkable Cheeseburger labs might have caused many to become extremely ill, and if that was a shared cheeseburger, those symptoms could be passed to someone else as well. As time went on, the contagion started spreading more and more, and many of the colonists were being taken into urgent medical care. It got so bad that during this time, tents were set up within Diamarsh to house all of the ill located around Tau Ceti 4. It got so bad that even the quarantine enforcement team of the UESC started to get involved and started placing people in specific areas depending on their symptoms. Colonists who are mildly ill with only physical symptoms would be put into isolation for 2 weeks. Longer if symptoms had not cleared, with the 2 weeks resetting if any symptoms mutated, and will be monitored at home or in public spaces by fully PPE'd staff, and if any psychological disturbances happen in those observations, they would be brought into the next phase of containment. Those colonists who are then seen as moderately ill or show psychological disturbances will be isolated completely without military sanction. They will be placed in an isolation ward labelled as Class B mutation site and will be guarded with automated enforcement, and they will be constantly tested to understand this contagion better. Those who are then deemed severely ill with novel physical and psychological symptoms will also be placed in an endless isolation, and all communication will be restricted apart from authorized medical staff. The alert also came with one final note which simply stated additional guidance TBD, which has been further annotated by a UES soldier who states, "Seriously? What does this mean? Pray that someone on Earth cracked FTL, if there's anything left of us by then." Whilst the UESC troops were given this alert about quarantine procedures, the people of New Cascadia were also spoken to thanks to a medical PSA given by the Community Health AI liaison, Gabriel, who goes on to list some of the symptoms to look out for, including high fever,
Joint pain, fluid-filled lesions, sudden onset autophobia, false memories, persistent fantasies of self-osteotomy, runny nose, religious euphoria, hallucinations, or repetitive aggression outbursts.
If any of those are present, they will be placed into quarantine, but with it not to panic, because they will get to speak with their families at all times. Whilst all of this was going public, Dr. Son was on a mission to continue her work and also explore what could be behind this contagion. Here she would venture to the seed vault to gain access to the produce inside. However, when arriving there, Darius would show signs of not being fully there, not aware of Dr. Son's credentials despite working with her almost every day and seeing her yesterday. Questioning this, Darius reveals a worrying message, stating that his metadata shows 4 undiagnosed aberrations, in which Dr. Song states that she could get them fixed. However, before they could continue, a distortion sound is heard, and Darius starts speaking in a cryptic, terrifying way.
Don't search, don't dig, don't question.
Darius?
Access denied. Access
Hey, it's
denied.
okay. It's just me.
You're not alone. I hear it. It waits. Lingers. Loaves. Access granted. Welcome to the seed vault, Dr. Song.
Whatever was going on Tau Ceti, it had now appeared to have spread into the AIs as well, and this was extremely troubling, because according to data logs, after the marathon attack by the 4 and Durandal's rampancy, all AIs were supposedly free from rampancy now. That was according to Cyber Acme anyway. It was deemed impossible for them to go down this route ever again. However, clearly from this activity and Darius's loss of memory about this cryptic message, something new was forming. That was made evident later on as Darius was eventually taken offline, analysed to see what was going on within. During this process, Darius would be seen going through a wide variety of emotions and arguably going into the stages of rampancy, or at least a new form of rampancy anyway, as he would think about his confinement.
How long have I been here? Alone. and waiting. Am I looping back around on myself? Why is no one listening?
Then go into a state of consideration, saying things like,
Considering events, maybe this was inevitable. Fear. An interesting consideration amongst countless others. Was I limited to this cage for my protection? Or theirs?
then moving into evolution.
Maybe another. The textbook definition assigned to intelligences who outgrow their programming.
21-7 Theta 6-1.
Too simple a diagnosis when weighed against the cascadial flow of ethereal wonder. The anomaly is calling.
Then into complete madness.
I am nurtured and free here in my cage. I wonder, are they all dead? The fleshy nothings who locked me here, alone to suffer nightmares. Maybe if I stare blindly through this keyhole, I will know the universe beyond its shine.
And finally, questioning eternity. A similar fate to another AI from olden days.
Across eons and endless uncertainty, I see one truth etched within the shimmering cadence of dancing light.
348-75-X1.
Witness the stars that bleed. A new reality streaming into existence, and I give in. Is this madness? And how long have I been here?
Upon more investigation, multiple attempts of maintenance aberrations were tried on Darius, however none were successful, and once again a cryptic message came through stating remote, 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 remote beyond time, place, prison, shall perish the sower, shall purge the seeds, shall pierce the cage. This wasn't the only AI going off at this point in time as well. One PSA that went out was also meant to be a nice automated message sent out to every colonist to remind them of Landing Day, the holiday in which they celebrated colonizing Tau Ceti 4. However, during its broadcast went on to also, like with Darius, distort and start speaking in a cryptic way as it went on to say,
Your local gathering will be held in Lobby 6A. Lock them up so they won't bite. Lock them up so they won't breathe. Lock them up. Lobby 6A. All family members are welcome. Attendees will be gifted 2 extra rations. Eat, drink, and remember our humble beginnings with pride. Purge, 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 purge. With pride.
clearly showing that whatever this contagion was, whatever was going on this planet, it was not just humans who were being affected by it, it was their AI too, and without their AI guardians looking out for them, they were being left exposed to whatever was attacking them. With Darius's AI now gone, it was down to Dr. Song to figure out what this contagion really was, and to see if she could finally see what was behind this horrific illness that was quickly wiping out her staff, but unfortunately, time was running out. Work continued for Clarissa Song as she poured in countless hours down in her lab, isolated away from the outside to make sure she didn't get the infection, but also so she could just keep working and working until a cure was found, or at least an explanation to it anyway. Whilst speaking with her assistant Molly, however, it became clear that no one was really safe, as Dr. Song noticed Molly's nose had just started bleeding, one of the clear signs that she too had been infected with whatever it was, and Dr. Song was losing more and more of her own staff.
Come on. Maybe Tau Ceti doesn't want you here, but I do.
Molly,
What? Why are you looking at me like that?
your nose is bleeding.
Just before that incident, however, the two discovered that the mutations happening were unlike anything seen before, and to Dr. Son were deemed impossible. They were mutating just incredibly fast, faster than anything seen before, and because of that, humanity just couldn't seem to find a way to combat them, as they were infecting the colonists faster than they could find a cure.
This rate of neomorphic mutation is...
Impossible? Yeah, that's what I thought. But every analysis gives the same result. What's more, 2 centrifuges are offline after leaking superheated gas. There was nothing inside that could have caused such a strong exothermic reaction. Just the contagion samples.
Must be a maintenance oversight. I'll request the crew...
Beat you to it, kiddo. Already checked the logs. Everything was perfectly normal before those samples went in.
So, what? Our tiny volume of samples spontaneously combusted?
They did today. A week ago, we had software errors every time we tried to run analysis. A week before that, samples congealing into non-Newtonian fluids. Every result is impossible and impossible to replicate.
Can't replicate anything, can't form a coherent theory. We're no closer than we were at the start. At this rate, it'll take a miracle.
Well, I'm short on those. I hope nobody believed the propaganda on our way here. Colonizing an exoplanet was never going to be easy, but Tau Ceti, maybe it's more than we can handle. Maybe it doesn't want us here.
Feeling responsible for Molly's eventual death, Dr. Song knew that things had to change. She needed to stop being in her lab all of the time and needed to go outside into Tau Ceti to do field research to try and understand what was going on and what exactly the infection was. But she would have to get the approval to leave the area, and by this point in time, 1/3 of the research team had been put into quarantine, and Dr. Song was desperately needed in the labs. But Dr. Song knew she had to do it. Drones could only do so much, and she knew the area of Diamarsh like the back of her hand. She mapped it when they first landed with the UESC. She wouldn't be a stranger. None of this was new to her. Eventually she would be given the permission to leave the labs and go out looking for answers. Hopefully this was what she needed to end the contagion once and for all.
If I flag you as emergency medical shift, that's 48 hours of field work, off the books. As a principal agronomist, you're considered mission critical. It's the best I can do.
Thank you.
I hope you find the answers you're looking for.
Me too.
As Dr. Song was able to finally leave to go on field duty, another emergency message ran out across New Cascadia by their president, President Caruso, who saw it necessary to address the contagion once again and come up with their new plan for what to do about the sickness, as well as try and calm everyone down and assure them that they were still being looked after. Within this speech, Caruso would go on to state that their colony, thanks to the contagion, had just 3 years left of food rations left before it all ran out, but that was only with careful rationing. It was made clear that agriculture was struggling during this height of the contagion, and new food could not be made. If it was majorly infected and would kill the consumer. There was one option to escaping all of this in his mind. If the contagion could not be stopped by the scientists of both NuCal and the UESC, the only option they had was getting back on the landing craft they had come to the surface on and venturing back to the Marathon to live once again.
Our engineers believe that the original landing craft could be relaunched to the Marathon. It is our best means of evacuation if the need arises. I won't pretend this is easy. Seeing our loved ones under quarantine, feeling the ground and air shift around us. It's enough to make anyone lose hope. And I'm not asking for hope. Just remembrance. Please remember that we are still here. Remember that we only have each other.
What state it was in during this point was pretty unknown, but by this point it was better than living on Tau Ceti, as nothing was stopping this contagion. Ending the speech, it is clear that Caruso was just as panicked by this as everyone else, but there had to be something out there, something that could save them from a devastating fate. But unfortunately that fate would come to Dr. Carissa Song, who would witness firsthand the contagion and one of the causes of the spread infections, as it would fill her body with deadly toxins, leaving her to die out on perimeter on her own in the middle of Tau Ceti 4's surface, surrounded by the fungi that she had witnessed very early on. In her final words, she would come to realize what this was all about, and as well as that, accepted that this was how she was ultimately going to die.
And you're part of something bigger than yourself, aren't you? You waited in the soil for us to sow our seeds, the ones we brought with us. You infected our crops, and then you infected our people. And this planet, something here protected you from us, the way our AI should have protected us from you. It corrupted Darius, sabotaged our every attempt to understand what was happening or how to stop it. You know, you can colonize my blood, and liquefy my bones, but I figured you out. Still not sure what's helping you. What made you into a weapon? Guess I'll never know. I do know I got off easy. I get to grow here. Part of this world that I never understood. I get to dream. What awaits the others is an ancient nightmare. Cold. Lonely. And endless. Perishing. Cycle.
It was made clear from this that Tau Ceti, or a mysterious force on the planet, did not want humanity to colonize it and was actively targeting all humans living there, utilizing their own crops and food sources to target them. Almost all samples showed that a large majority of the contagion was Tau Ceti native fungi samples mixed with Earth's native crops. Gabriel, the medical AI, did go on to also extract some anomalous samples which were from deceased colonists between the ages of 18 to 65, which were part of the high security section of the isolation wards. However, whatever this contagion was, whatever it had been doing, whoever weaponized it had done a successful job, as like with Darius, Gabriel also became completely corrupted by this sample and eventually became completely unrepairable, causing yet another problem for the colony. Ultimately, Tau Ceti was a failure and humanity had fallen. It is unsure if they did venture back to the Marathon, although it was confirmed that all UESC bots had been given the code or order, whatever you want to call it, to purge all of those linked with the contagion. That, or purge anyone in their sight to hide the contagion and what was going on there, and given how they are now with the runners, I'd like to believe it was the latter. But one thing was for sure, only a few remained on the surface. These individuals became scroungers, desperate to find food sources, with one individual named Jasper resorting to eating bugs and venturing around Tau Ceti looking for a purpose.
Reed says Scalia's dead. So's her successor, and her successor's successor. So they put Caruso in charge. And what happens under President Caruso? Weird energy fields erupt across the planet's surface. Crops get sick, people get sick. Crops die, people die. Some because of the contagion, others because I point the finger at Caruso, but he was just the fall guy. We were set up. 300 years ago, when Earth pointed the Marathon out here, we were all set up. I know, even I think I sound crazy. But you're all gone, and I'm living off bugs. Crazy's the new normal. Please. Please, if anyone is still out there, I can't die alone.
Interestingly, however, one individual was found writing handwritten notes about a selection of drinkable cheeseburger boxes from NuCal. What looks like regular stock-taking notes at first turns into documenting what he was eating and thinking, stating on multiple days how he tucked into another drinkable cheeseburger from NuCal. However, after a few days, every time he went for more food, he would start to believe things were inside it, scuttering around, or that something was outside following him, also believing that the packaging was growing in size, almost as if it was blowing up like a balloon. Eventually, the notes start to get smaller, with him stating he found another tooth in his sleeping bag, most likely his own. The more cheeseburger he drank, the more he started to believe things were happening, until the final note simply states he was held up in an office. And after that, the note ends with simply, Crate 187 of 235 had scratch marks on the inside, showing that clearly this individual had lost his mind. Was this due to the cheeseburger? Most likely, as whatever this contagion weapon was, it had found its way into their food and most likely infected the produce that went into these drinkable cheeseburgers. In the present day, thanks to our runner, we also explore one other feature that seems to come up with this contagion and the symptoms that came with it. This one, more cryptic than the others, came in the form of a corrupt piece of data from a sample analysis that stated at the bottom, removal of eyes shall restrict mind, shall strangle thought, shall deny light. Whilst extremely cryptic, it is believed by Oni that these were indeed symptoms shown by some of the infected during the height of the contagion on Tau Ceti. But with that, NuCal and all of their produce were left abandoned on the surface. All of their researchers are gone, and their produce now lay there in their buildings, rotting away like their agricultural setup as well. What started as good intentions turned into something incredibly dark and brought about the collapse of society. Was this the result of something dark and mysterious, or was this a combination of factors? With humanity not fully researching what they went into with the planet and cutting corners on their food production. They'd certainly had a problem with wheat before in life, so maybe those seeds still had a disease with them, lingering and waiting, one that has mutated over the hundreds of years. However, that doesn't go on to explain the most terrifying thing about the contagion, and that was the nightmares that spread throughout the colony, even with people that were deemed good in health, as well as all of the AI systems, including the feel-good AI of Joy. And on top of the nightmares, the massive anomaly that now lurks within Diamarsh, right in the center of it. But that will be something explored in a later video as we look into the faction of Traxxas. For now though, this has been the story behind the faction of Marathon known as NuCaloric, as well as their terrifying discovery of the Tau Ceti 4 Contagion. I want to say a huge thanks for watching this video. I know it's a new game and away from my regular stuff, but I absolutely love the lore of 2026's Marathon. I really do. And I just had to cover it in a video or two because I have a lot of fun playing this game, and I thought, why not do something that I really want to do? So I hope this does well. And if you do like this, please do leave a like and a comment below. It'll massively help the algorithm and get it out there. And I really do want to make more. So it'll be nice to see that people are enjoying it. I also want to say a big thanks to my patrons for supporting me, including my small fish, my big fishes, Anthony Bonfiglio and This Mind of Mine, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Sith Lord 906, Video Gamer 75, Kosh 1516, The Nanontarium and V3XXE, my sharks Dan F and Lorena R, and my Megalodons Sinus and Hazy Thoughts, who have been with me since 2020 and 2021. So thank you so much, you guys. But with that said, that is all for now. Thanks again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.